How long should you wait after eating before practicing Qigong? That's going to be the topic of this episode of Qi Life. Okay, so this is another bit of a frequently asked question vlog. This is one that comes up fairly regularly, and it's a good thing for people to have some understanding about. As with so many of these little topics, little details around our Qigong practice, the answer is it depends. And there are some principles that will help you to understand what it depends on. It's much better to have an understanding of these principles than it is to just have a hard and fast rule of what you should and shouldn't do, because that's going to help you to be much more flexible and apply things appropriately and get the best benefits from your Qigong practice and for your health. So when we eat, we consume food, and then our body has to actually work pretty hard to digest that food. When we do Qigong practice, so Qi means energy, Gong means work or skill, there's actually some work involved, some effort involved in our body working to do whatever we're doing with our energy within that Qigong practice, whether that be take more energy in, whether it be release, discharge energy, whether it be circulating the energy, moving it to different places and so on. There's some work, there's some effort involved. So if our body is too busy digesting food, our Qigong practice is going to be less effective because the body really wants to send energy to those specific digestive organs and get on with that rather than, doing whatever else we want to do with it in our Qigong practice. Equally, if we're trying to do our Qigong practice, we might, through our intention, through what we're doing, through our movements, succeed in moving the energy, our body's energy out and doing different things with it away from our digestion, and that's not going to be good for our digestion. So we want to have a harmony between these two things. So does that mean we should never eat before doing Qigong practice, or wait hours and hours and hours, after we eat every time before we do Qigong practice? No, not necessarily. Our body is quite capable of multitasking to a certain degree. Often we can walk and talk at the same time, for example. I'm not right now, I'm just standing still. I'm mixing things up with these vlogs, sometimes doing them walking, talking. Sometimes it's nice to just have it on a tripod so things aren't moving around behind me so much. I think that's good for the viewer sometimes as well. But equally, just because our body's digesting doesn't mean that it's incapable of doing anything else. But there is a question of degrees. And so if you've eaten a large meal, well, then the body's having to work a lot harder, put a lot more effort, a lot more energy into that digestion. In that case, you're going to need to wait longer, or it's going to be healthy for you to wait longer after eating before you then do some kind of Qigong practice. On the other hand, if you only have a very light, very small meal, well, often the body's not going to need to send so much energy to digest that, and you're perfectly able to do a Qigong practice relatively soon after that. In fact, there are times when it's really beneficial to eat at least a small meal before doing your Qigong practice. Particularly for some people, their blood sugar levels just aren't as stable as would be ideal. Now, the more resilient you are with healthy blood sugar levels and your body's ability to keep those level, it's fine to not eat before doing Qigong practice. But for some people, they can have a tendency, as the body, the energy system starts to work, for the blood sugar to drop, because again, there's real exertion, real effort going on. And so for people like that, it's often a really good idea for them to eat something not too long before their Qigong practice. Particularly if they're doing their Qigong practice, for example, early in the morning, or first thing in the morning, and they've just slept all night, they haven't eaten, and then they get up, and doing their Qigong practice straight away may not be the best thing for them. They might actually be better to eat something, not too much, because again, you don't want too much energy going to the digestion away from whatever else you might be doing, but enough to actually give some fuel to help keep that those energy levels, particularly the blood sugar levels, more level while they move into their Qigong practice. And so for example, that might be just eating a piece of fruit or a small amount of some kind of cereal or grain or something like that. And in that sort of instance, you know, you might eat that and you might be ready to do your practice half an hour later, you know, even a little bit less, 25 minutes later. It's not, you know, not a magic half hour or something, but just something very light, and put some fuel in, and then it's actually going to contribute to a better effect from your Qigong practice. On the other hand, if you eat like a really big meal, maybe a really big lunch or a really big dinner, and you're like so full afterwards, yeah, you might want to wait a few hours before doing your Qigong practice, because if you overload your system with what you eat, it's going to take longer for it to gradually work it through and then go like, okay, we've moved that through enough. Now we can send our energy out to do other things. Now, those are the two extremes, like either not eating anything, because again, someone whose blood sugar levels maintain, you know, a really resilient state level, you know, they can sleep all night, wake up, do their Qigong practice, no problem, eat afterwards, that's fine. For other people, it's going to be better to eat beforehand. So that's one end of the scale, maybe just having a very small meal and you're ready to do your practice 20 minutes, 30 minutes afterwards. Really big meal, it might not be a good idea to do any Qigong practice for several hours to let that settle, but there's a continuum in between where, you know, maybe if you have a moderate sized meal, it's a good idea to wait for about an hour or so to allow everything to move through and to just for your body to have done enough. Of course, the process of digestion will continue for quite some time after that, but have done enough of that initial digestion that's like, okay, cool, we've got that going. Now we're ready to send some of that energy out to other things that you might be wanting to focus on within your Qigong practice. So hopefully that's helpful for you, gives you just some good common sense understanding of the principle behind this, and you can apply that within your Qigong practice. You might find that you're someone who you're like, I'm fine, I don't need to eat anything, and I can do my practice. Or you might be someone who, hey, actually having a small snack beforehand helps me, but certainly be aware that after a large meal, you're generally best to just let your body do its thing, and then have a break before doing your Qigong practice.